Good evening, Mr. Gladstein. My name is Aisha, and I'm a journalist with the Voice of Uyghur. And it is our honor to be able to have you on our platform today. I know you're limited in time, so we can get started right away if you'd like.
No, let me just say that it's an honor for me to be here. Been a long time supporter of the Uyghur people, and ever since we hosted Rabia Kadir at the Oslo Freedom Forum in 2010, she gave me a very special hat that I still have today. And over the years, we've tried to do what we can to shine a light on what's happening in Xinjiang and elsewhere, and have given the stage at our event to many amazing Uyghurs. And I look forward to trying to share some knowledge that I think is very important with the Uyghur community today.
That's great. So we have a few questions for you. Like I said, I know you have limited time.
No,
So,
it's okay.
so we can get started right away. So can you explain to our audience what is Bitcoin exactly?
Yeah. So before I do that, it's worth discussing money and politics and control, right?
Sure.
Governments need to uh, establish control over people, and they do it in different ways. And one of them is through money, right? They force you to pay taxes, for example, in a particular money, which forces you to buy into that system and be part of that system, right? So that's how they might start to control you in a public kind of way in your particular country. But this also happens on the geopolitical level, right? So, for example, um, the Chinese government may give a loan denominated in yuan to an African country, and it may force that country to pay it back in yuan, right? The U.S., of course, does this the most often, right, around the world through the petrodollar, right? So, with the threat of violence, the U.S. government forces other countries to buy oil in dollars, and if you don't do that, we go to war with you, basically. So, the Saudis and the others in the Gulf only accept dollars for their oil, and this is one of the main drivers that increases demand for dollars around the world. Right now, there's a changing of the guard a little bit. The dollar is still very dominant, but the Chinese government really wants its currency to be dominant as well. So they're doing a lot, like around the world, to try and increase adoption of the yuan. It's not working so well. There's only about 2 to 3% of international transactions that are done in yuan, and only about 2 to 3% of reserves are held in yuan. I mean, the overwhelming majority of reserves that countries hold as like savings, national savings, is done in gold or dollars or euros. Okay, so the yuan is not the Chinese government is not succeeding on this yet. And currency in the end may be their weak point. But the reason why I brought this up is because it's important to understand the relationship between governments and the currency that they create. It is the way that they sustain their power. Okay, um, governments that have to give up on their currency and use somebody else's aren't as powerful anymore. So, for example, this happened in France with the CFA. It's happened in different countries in Latin America with dollarization. You give up your sovereignty and your control, and you give up kind of what you want to do, your ability to do what you want to do when you give up your currency. So, the Chinese government is able to control its currency, control its population, and do what it wants. And that is obviously to the great detriment of the world when it comes to what's happening in Xinjiang, Inner Mongolia, Tibet, and other places. So Bitcoin is the separation of money and state. Bitcoin is a currency that no government controls. Okay, it's no one's liability. Uh, Instead of a central bank printing the currency, right, or minting it, right, going back to the days when kings would mint gold or silver currency, right? Today it's done all digitally, but essentially central banks mint currency, and then banks also create money based on those bank reserves. Bitcoin is very different. There is no creation by decree, by fiat. Bitcoin is created in a decentralized way by people competing to solve a particularly difficult computer problem. And over time, they are rewarded with small amounts of Bitcoin. This is how the Bitcoin issuance happens. It is a decentralized mint, the first one in history. And it is why you hear about this term Bitcoin mining. All these people around the world are competing with computers and these specialized computer equipment pieces called ASICs to mine Bitcoin, and they're basically competing to process transactions on the network. All these different people around the world, different jurisdictions: China, United States, Canada, Kazakhstan, Iran, etc. And this is really important because it means that no one can censor a transaction. Because even if the Chinese or the Americans don't want your transaction to go through, well, the Russians are going to process it. So this is how like the network is censorship resistant. Your transaction will always go through in Bitcoin. And the other thing that's very important is that there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist. This was set out by the creator of the network, Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who they were. We don't know if it was a man, a woman, a group. We have no idea. They disappeared in 2010. But their legacy is this incredible decentralized, scarce money system that governments cannot devalue. So, Bitcoin is a political project. It takes power away from governments, gives it back to the people. And that, I think, is very, very important in the context of the Uyghur struggle.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that brief explanation. My next question is, what are some of your responsibilities as a chief strategy officer at the Human Rights Foundation?
Yeah, so the Human Rights Foundation is a nonprofit created in 2005 that seeks to challenge authoritarianism and support individual rights around the world. And we have a variety of programs and events and campaigns that we run to help do that. My particular portfolio is to help with the growth of the organization, to do fundraising and marketing, and to help with some sort of, different strategic programs.
Okay. What is the connection? I know you kind of touched upon this, but just to go into a little more detail of what is the connection between cryptocurrency and human rights in China?
Yeah. So, and again, I'll focus on Bitcoin. I think it's worth your listeners to really focus on Bitcoin as opposed to the other cryptocurrencies, at least until they're like experts on Bitcoin. Then they can make their own decisions. But I would really suggest focusing on Bitcoin. It's like the dominant of all the cryptocurrencies.
Yes.
So when it comes to Bitcoin and China, the relationship is interesting. On the one hand, Bitcoin cannot be controlled by the CCP. They cannot change the rules. They cannot print more Bitcoin. They cannot stop your transaction. They cannot even stop you from using it. Okay, so they have no control over it. On the other hand, a large amount of Bitcoin mining, perhaps 60% of all the world's energy used to mine Bitcoin, is being expended inside Chinese territory. Now, that number is declining over time, but it's very ironic because or funny almost, because the CCP and its proxies are doing the world a service, ironically, by like processing the transactions of this freedom money network. And they're doing it not out of altruism. They don't care about your freedom, obviously. They're doing it out of self-interest. They want to earn the Bitcoin that they win from processing the transactions. And usually the people doing this are able to then, go around capital controls, things like that with that Bitcoin, or they save it and it protects their savings. But they're all doing it out of self-interest. But the grand irony here is like all the people involved in Bitcoin mining in China are helping grow this like freedom tool, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. So for Chinese citizens in the diaspora and their families back in China, this Bitcoin is a very powerful human rights tool because it allows them to transact and send value back and forth with no government in the middle, no government even really knowing what's going on. So, for example, you can quite easily use any number of services inside China today to turn your RMB into Bitcoin. And then once you do that, you can send it anywhere on Earth. It's incredible. It's very different than the existing legacy system, and especially powerful for, like, let's say Uyghurs who already are living in Australia or the United States. It allows them to send money back and forth very easily with no one in the middle, and no sort of like, financial barriers or walls. So this probably matters a lot for Uyghurs who are in places like Turkey or the Middle East or whatever, it allows them to like take their wages that they're earning and convert it into Bitcoin through an exchange and then keep it there. That's like their savings account that they control. You are your own bank. No one can take it from you. And if they want, they can share it with family or friends all over the world, or they can pay people for translation or work or things like that. So I think for like minorities inside China, this is very, very important. I mean, in a place like Hong Kong, it has interesting significance because in Hong Kong, if you support the democracy movement, you get your bank account frozen. Okay. So what's interesting is the government, the CCP cannot freeze a Bitcoin account. So, we can continue supporting the democracy movement in Hong Kong by donating Bitcoin. We can't do it through dollars, Hong Kong dollars, US dollars, because those people may get their bank accounts frozen. But the CCP can't stop Bitcoin. So I think that's why it's very, very powerful. And over time, long term, Bitcoin will actually just sort of reduce the power that the CCP has over its citizens. I mean, again, like power comes from the ability to control money and to control your citizenry. Bitcoin gives power back to the people and allows them to control their time and energy. And it prevents devaluation, and it gives them the freedom to move that money wherever they want. So over time, this is going to grow to be an extremely powerful human rights tool in China.
That's amazing to hear. My only concern is, what if they stop, or what if they create a system where people can't reach Bitcoin or, go onto the internet and access it?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's very unlikely. I mean, look, how many Chinese use VPNs today? Tens of millions. I mean, if you have VPN, you can get to your crypto exchange. Like there's no, like it's sort of like Bitcoin is the internet. It's just the internet of money. So correct. If you're in a very surveilled like city in Xinjiang, yeah, the internet is not really, you're not going to be able to use Bitcoin. Okay. We should be very clear about this, but it's more of a meta concept. Like, especially, first of all, anyone outside of that region who has a relatively normal life can absolutely use and access Bitcoin through a smartphone and a VPN. And of course, all Uyghurs in the diaspora can use it across the world. So, I think we need to be careful here about what it can and can't do. But, anyone who's able to transmit messages can receive Bitcoin. And, if we want to really get into the details, you don't even need internet access. Honestly, if you want to be real creative about it, you can receive and send Bitcoin via satellite today. So if you were able to smuggle, a piece of satellite, technology into a place like North Korea or whatever, like you could receive Bitcoin transactions. And here's the interesting part, actually. So the important part about owning Bitcoin is what's called the private key, which is basically 24 English words that you write down when you set up a wallet. Like, so if I have a wallet on my phone, a Bitcoin wallet, when I set it up, it's open source. I don't have to put my name, my email, anything. I open it up. When I create the wallet, I write down 24 English words on a piece of paper. Okay, right? That's my control over that Bitcoin. So anyone that you could get 24 words to, you can give money to. So again, you don't need like access to a cryptocurrency exchange or anything. If you wanted to, you could give these 24 words by phone or by letter or God knows what to somebody, even if they're in a difficult situation. And they can like save those words for years. And if they finally can emerge out of that situation to somewhere else where they can like access the internet and do more stuff, then they could spend that money. I think that's really powerful. This idea that like you can memorize your Bitcoin password.
Yeah.
And I mean, people might say, oh, that's too much, 24 words. There's more than 10 million people in the world who've memorized the entire Quran. So don't tell me that humans can't memorize 24 words,
Yeah.
And those 24 words can be the key to your destiny. So it's pretty remarkable, I would say.
Yeah, I can see how powerful it is that the questions that you've answered so far, they've basically tied into all the questions I have. My last question here is, what makes Bitcoin powerful enough to bring beneficial change to our economy? But you basically answered that question. It is a powerful tool that everyone has access to, but I feel like people lack the information they need.
Yes. Yeah. No,
So
I'll answer. I want to touch on two things before I go.
sure.
So absolutely, it's lack of information and education. It's a new thing. It's a really weird thing. Like Bitcoin takes a lot of patience and curiosity and open-mindedness. I mean, it is unlike anything you've ever seen before. I mean, it's one of these world-changing inventions that wouldn't make sense that, to someone a long time ago. Like much like the cell phone wouldn't make sense to someone in the 16th century. Like this is one of those things. It is absolutely at the same level as the cell phone, the internet, the printing press, all these things.
Like a revolution.
It is a peaceful revolution. Absolutely. So the most important thing is education. So any day now, the Little Bitcoin book, which is a book I wrote several years ago with other Bitcoiners from around the world, is going to be translated into Uyghur for free on littlebitcoinbook.com. You'll be able to go there, share the PDF through the whole community. That way, at least you'll be able to learn, the community will be able to learn about this, figure it out, have a resource. So very excited about that. Second of all, I'm doing workshops for Uyghur communities and groups, so people can just get in touch with me via Twitter, and I'm happy to do workshops. I want to share this knowledge. I think it's very important. And the reason why is we're basically in an adoption curve of a new technology. If you think about any technology like the credit card, the washing machine, the television, basically there's a curve that starts with very few people using the thing. And then it just goes like this, 20, 30, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70% of the population. And then it starts curving the other way, up to 100, right? It's an S curve like this. So we're at the bottom of the S curve at Bitcoin adoption. No more than about 100 million people have used Bitcoin. That's about 1% of the world. Okay. So I firmly believe that by 2030, we're going to be past 1 billion users. Okay. So this is the decade where getting in now is like getting into the internet in the 1990s. It's going to be beneficial for you, your person, your family, your community, your cause. Now is your time to be on the edge of the next big thing. So I just would encourage people to explore, have an open mind, learn as much as they can. And the last thing I wanted to address is this issue that the media keeps saying that Bitcoin has a Xinjiang problem. I think this is really important to address. First of all, it's not true. Second of all, the reality is that the CCP has a Bitcoin problem. That's the reality here.
Yeah.
The CCP cannot control Bitcoin. People are using Bitcoin to get around their capital controls. People are using Bitcoin to save against theft and devaluation. People are using Bitcoin to send money out of China in a censorship-resistant way to anyone else in the world. Bitcoin is a way to protect yourself against the CCP. The fact that there are some CCP and corporate entities using energy in the Xinjiang province to secure the Bitcoin network is one of the grandest ironies ever. Again, because all they can do is support and strengthen the Bitcoin network. They cannot control it. They cannot damage it. They cannot harm it. All they can do is help it. So it's just really greatly ironic. Now, it is still a good idea to try and push those companies out of there because we don't want any business in Xinjiang or Inner Mongolia. So there was news 2 days ago that mining was now going to be stopped in Inner Mongolia. This is fantastic news. Number one, it's a very repressive province, not as bad as Xinjiang, but there's obviously, as you know, a lot of persecution of minorities there. Second of all, it's a very dirty energy province. It's coal producing. So we want to be using renewable energy to mine Bitcoin. So it's better for the environment. We want to be using hydro and nuclear or solar or wind, right? We don't want to be using coal. So here's the interesting part. In China, Inner Mongolia was a coal province. So that's actually good because that means that energy is going to be used somewhere else that's more renewable. The other provinces in China that produce almost all of the energy that's used for Bitcoin are Xinjiang and Yunnan and Sichuan province, right? So Yunnan and Sichuan are all hydro, almost all hydro, all renewable. And Xinjiang is coal. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't want Bitcoin mining in Xinjiang. I completely agree. Let's force them out of there. And I've heard actually from people that they are leaving that place, that basically local authorities are being restrictive and discouraging mining. So hopefully in the future, there'll be no Bitcoin mining there anyway. But the point is it's not a relevant or reasonable thing to point to Bitcoin mining in Xinjiang and say this is bad for Uyghurs. In the same way that they make a lot of solar panels and a lot of ketchup in Xinjiang. Well, it doesn't mean that those things are bad for humans. It just means that the companies making those things are bad for humans. Yes, the Bitcoin mining company that's active in Xinjiang, let's get them out of there. Let's boycott them. Let's protest them. But do not conflate it with Bitcoin itself, which is this really powerful human rights tool. That's really the key reason I wanted to do this interview, was to help people understand that. So yes, let's boycott everyone doing business in Xinjiang. Absolutely. You will find me and HRF supporting that. But what's very important for this community to understand is that Bitcoin is a human rights tool. You better learn how to use it. And if you can unlock that learning and share that, and if Uyghurs start using Bitcoin basically as their natural, if Uyghurs start using Bitcoin as their national currency, now, I mean, you guys are going to be so powerful in the future. I mean,
Yeah.
in the Bitcoin future. So my plea would be, do not try to create your own currency. It's not going to work. Use Bitcoin. Be an early adopter of Bitcoin. It'll be like a really big deal in the future. So I'm committed to helping you all do that. So, thanks again for this
Great.
lovely interview.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gladstein, for your time. We hope you have another interview similar to this in the future for Voice.
I'd love to. Anytime.
And it was a pleasure having you. We appreciate all the knowledge that you put forth about this, because we see that there is a huge lack of knowledge, especially even with like youth. I don't think they understand it completely. So hopefully we can, keep educating them through our platform. And I'm sure you're doing a
Please.
lot. I've seen your videos too, which are great. And
Thank you.
it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your time.
Anytime I can join you to talk about something that the CCP cannot control, I would be delighted to do so.
And that's the information we want to give. It's amazing that the CCP can't control this. I
agree.
Feel like there's only a few things I could name that they can't control. So this is
pretty much not much. Yeah, the answer is not much, except for this. Yes, and look, I hope that Uyghur nonprofits. My goal is that Uyghur nonprofits and Uyghur advocacy organizations start accepting Bitcoin donations and start saving in Bitcoin for the future. This is going to make a big difference for them. So that's kind of how I want to help. Okay.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. If we have any questions from people, we'll reach out to you and
send them my way.
Yeah, set up an interview and discuss those questions.
Great. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.